At 76, I stopped asking for closure and decided to give it to myself. My husband, Marcus, had spent 50 years building his wins, his reputation, his hidden portfolio, his secrets. He thought his emotional abandonment was complex, something I, his quiet wife in Poway, couldn't possibly understand. He was wrong. This isn't a story of revenge made of fire. It's quiet revenge, built with patience, silence, and planning. This is how I made peace in San Diego. Not by healing, but by taking control and watching him, one win at a time, lose everything. The silence in our Poway house was absolute. It was a thick, heavy quiet that swallowed the sound of my own breathing. For 50 years, this house had been filled with noise. Children, then grandchildren, then just Marcus on his endless conference calls. Now there was only the low hum of the sub-zero refrigerator and the steady tick, tick, tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. I sat at the kitchen island, the cool quartz smooth under my forearms. The air smelled of coffee and the lemon oil I used on the cabinets. I was 76 years old, and I was, for the first time, completely alone. My iPad was open on the counter. I had been trying to set up a legacy trust for the grandchildren. Marcus, 78, had always handled the complex finances, but I wanted this one thing to be mine. I was tapping through the family cloud drive, looking for the children's birth certificates, when I saw the folder. It was just one word, downtown. I tapped it. Inside were not photos, but spreadsheets, scanned deeds, bank statements from an institution I did not recognize, and a file named Sentinel 1402 Deed. A car door slammed outside. Marcus was home from his golf game. He walked into the kitchen, his face pink from the sun, smelling of sweat and expensive aftershave. He was a proud man, charismatic. He still looked successful. "Eleanor," he said, heading straight for the refrigerator, not looking at me. "Anything for lunch?" My throat was dry. "Marcus," I said. My voice sounded small. "What is the Sentinel? Unit 1402? He stopped, the refrigerator door half open. The cold air hit my face. He turned slowly. He saw the iPad. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. He closed the refrigerator and walked over, placing his hand on my shoulder. His hand was heavy. "Ellie, come on," he sighed. He used his thumb to swipe the screen blank. "That's complex stuff. It's just portfolio management. Diversification, it's for us. For our own good," he patted my shoulder twice. "Don't worry your head about it. I'm handling it. Now how about that lunch?" He smiled. It was the same smile he gave community board members, the same one he gave our children when they questioned him. It was a smile that managed. It was a smile that dismissed. I looked at him. The man I had married. The man who had for years been emotionally abandoning me in plain sight. He saw me as part of the scenery, a part of the perfect house, a thing to be managed, polished, and set aside. The pain I expected to feel just wasn't there. The grief I had carried for a decade evaporated. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. I stopped asking for closure. In that precise moment, I gave it to myself. "Of course," I said. I slid off the stool. "Turkey or roast beef?" As I made his sandwich, he went to his office to take a call. I heard his voice rise and fall, full of charm and authority. I finished my work, then went back to the island. I picked up the iPad. My hand was perfectly steady. I tapped the screen, and my own face, 76 years old and lined, looked back at me from the dark glass. I opened the web browser. I typed Poway Community Center into the search bar. I clicked on the classes link. I scrolled past water gardening. I scrolled past grief counseling. I found the one I wanted. Cybersecurity for seniors. I tapped register. The next morning, the alarm on my phone buzzed at 8 a.m. I shut it off. I did not get up. I just lay there, listening to the sounds of the house. The click of the air conditioning. A car door distant. At 8:05 a.m., I heard Marcus stirring. At 8:10 a.m., I heard the shower. At 8:30 a.m., he came into the bedroom, knotting his tie. "Ellie, did you pick up my prescription?" he asked. "No," I said, my eyes on the ceiling. He stopped. "No, the pharmacy texted you. It was ready yesterday. I was busy, I said. I sat up, pushed the comforter back, and walked into the closet to get dressed. I could feel his eyes on my back. Busy? Busy with what? His voice was tight with irritation. I pulled a cream-colored blouse from its hanger. I'm taking a class at the community center. I heard him huff. A class? Fine, I'll get it on the way. I walked out of the closet. He was standing by the bed, holding his small plastic pill organizer. It was empty, and my heart medication? He asked. Did you at least fill this? For 30 years, I had filled that little box every Sunday night. I forgot, I said. He stared at me. You forgot. Yes. I sat on the edge of the bed and began to put on my shoes. He made an angry sound, something between a curse and a sigh. He swept the box off the nightstand and stomped back into the bathroom. I heard the rattle of pill bottles. My revenge began not with a fire, but with an empty space. It was the space where my care used to be. That Friday we had a dinner engagement. One of Marcus's charity board functions. I wore my blue silk dress. I put on my pearls. I sat beside him at the table, and I said nothing. I didn't smile at the bad jokes. I didn't refill the wine glass of the woman sitting next to me. I didn't ask Marcus's boss about his wife. I just existed. I ate my salmon. I listened. I was a polite, melancholy ghost. Eleanor, you're quiet tonight, the woman beside me said, placing her hand on my arm. Her skin was warm. Are you feeling all right, dear? Marcus stiffened. He turned his charisma on her, a bright, desperate floodlight. She's just tired. Aren't you, Ellie? Big week? I turned to the woman. I gave her a small, empty smile. I'm fine, thank you. I'm just finding myself. The words hung in the air. The woman's smile faltered. Marcus's face went rigid. The car ride home was loud with silence. The leather seats squeaked. The engine hummed. Marcus's hands were tight on the steering wheel. He parked in the garage, killed the engine. The quiet was immediate. What was that, Eleanor? He demanded. What was what? At the dinner. Finding yourself. You made me look like a fool. You made us look like fools. I turned to look at him. His face was a shadow in the garage light. Are you sick? He pushed. Is that it? Are you depressed? You can tell me. I can handle it. He was poking. He was searching for the wound. He needed the tears. He needed the anger. He needed the emotional outburst that he knew how to manage. I gave him nothing. I'm not sick, Marcus, I said. My voice was level. I'm just not interested anymore. I opened the car door. I have my class tomorrow morning. I left him there in the dark. The next day, I didn't go to the community center. I drove to a coffee shop in Rancho Bernardo. I sat in a booth with my iPad and a cup of black coffee. I opened a new, secure email account. Then I opened my browser. I searched for San Diego Forensic Accountants. The website I clicked had a generic name. Consolidated Solutions. It looked like counseling. The contact form asked what services I was interested in. I typed my message. Hello, my name is Eleanor. I need to book a consultation. I believe my husband has been managing some complex assets, and I need help making sense of them. I hit send. The classroom at the Poway Community Center smelled like stale coffee and whiteboard cleaner. The lights were bright, fluorescent, and buzzed just loud enough to hear. I was the only person in the Cybersecurity for Seniors workshop over the age of 70. The instructor was a young man with a laptop covered in stickers. Okay, he said. Let's talk about encrypted files and secure recovery. Most people think when you delete something, it's gone. It's almost never gone. You just have to know where to look. I sat in the front row. I took notes in a small leather-bound book. I learned about virtual private networks. I learned about metadata. I learned how to recover files that were permanently deleted. The other attendees were worried about Facebook scams. I was worried about the Sentinel, Unit 1402. 2 days later, I had my grief counseling session. The office was not in Poway. It was in a tall glass building in the University Town Center area. The sign in the lobby just said, Consolidated Solutions. A woman named Ms. Davis called my name. She was not a therapist. She wore a sharp blazer, and her office had no soft chairs or boxes of tissues. It had 2 computer monitors and a locked filing cabinet. Mrs. Van Camp? She asked. gesturing for me to sit. Eleanor, I sat. I placed my iPad on her desk. You said you needed help making sense of some files. I unlocked the iPad and opened the downtown folder. I turned it around for her to see. My husband says this is complex portfolio management. For our own good. Ms. Davis did not touch the iPad. She leaned forward, reading the screen. Her eyes moved quickly over the spreadsheets, the scanned deed, the bank statements from the unfamiliar bank. She was silent for a full minute. I just waited. The air in her office was still. Mrs. Van Camp, she said finally, her voice neutral. Is your name on any of these accounts? I don't believe so, I said. Are you aware that this downtown property, she tapped the file name, Sentinel 1.02 deed, is leveraged against your shared assets? Your home in Poway? My blood did not run cold. I did not gasp. I just nodded, as if she had confirmed the weather. I suspected as much. I can look into this, she said. She leaned back. My investigation will be discreet, but I will need you to sign an engagement letter. And I will need access. Can you get me access to his main computer? I have his passwords, I said. I've had them for years. He just never changed them. Her face showed the first hint of an expression. It was not pity. It looked like respect. Good, she said. Let's begin. That evening, I returned home. Marcus was in the living room reading the paper. He looked up when I came in. He was trying. He was trying to be the charming man I married. Ellie! There you are, he said, folding the paper. How was your class? He smiled. Did you learn how to pot a plant? It was informative, I said. I walked past his chair. Well, I was thinking, he said, his voice following me down the hall. Maybe we could go downtown this weekend, to the gas lamp. Get dinner, just the two of us, reconnect. I stopped at the entrance to my small study. I turned. Downtown? What a nice idea, Marcus. But I'm busy this weekend. I went into the study and closed the door. I sat at my desk. The house was quiet again. I opened my laptop. I logged into the secure email account I had created. I opened a new message. I attached the files. The spreadsheets from the downtown folder. The scans of the deeds. The statements from the hidden bank account. I typed in the recipient's email address. An address I knew by heart. david.vancamp.cpawogmail.com.our son. The accountant. The one who, unlike his sister, always saw things in black and white. In the subject line, I typed one word. Confused. In the body of the email, I wrote, David, darling. Your father has some complex files I can't make sense of. You're so good with numbers. Could you look at these for me? Love, Mom. My hand was perfectly steady as I moved the mouse. I clicked send. The next 3 days were quiet. Marcus tried to fill the silence. He bought me flowers, hydrangeas, which I left on the counter in their plastic wrap until the petals started to brown. He talked loudly about his charity work, about a fundraising gala he was planning. I just nodded, my eyes on my iPad, as I finished the final module of my cybersecurity class. I had my second counseling session with Ms. Davis. I gave her the information from my class. She used it to run a forensic recovery on the cloud drive. She found the deleted files, more spreadsheets, a name, a woman's name, attached to utility bills for the Sentinel. Unit 1402, Ms. Davis printed them for me. This is a different kind of abandonment, Eleanor. It's not just financial. Yes, I said, taking the papers. I know. I was sitting in my study that afternoon when my phone vibrated. I looked at the screen. David, I answered. Hello, David. Mom. His voice was not warm. It was tight, professional, the voice he used for audits. I'm in my car. I'm on the 5, just south of Irvine. I'll be at your house in an hour. Oh? I said, keeping my voice mild. Are you visiting? No, he said. I'm coming for a meeting. Is he there? He's in his office. On a call. Good, David said. Don't tell him I'm coming. I looked at the files, Mom. I ran the numbers. We need to talk. Alone. All right, David. I'll see you soon. I hung up. I waited in the living room. I heard Marcus laugh, that big, charismatic laugh he used for donors. The clock in the hall ticked. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Marcus's voice boomed from his office. "Ellie, can you get that?" I opened the front door. David stood on the mat. He was 48 years old, my serious son, and his face was pale. He carried a leather briefcase. "Hi, Mom," he said. He stepped inside, but he didn't hug me. He looked past me, down the hall toward Marcus's office. "He's still on his call," I said. "Let's go to the kitchen." We stood at the kitchen island, the same place my life had split apart. He opened his briefcase and took out a stack of papers. They were my emails, printed out, covered in his red ink calculations. "He put your house, this house, as collateral on the downtown condo, Mom," he said, his voice a low, angry whisper. "It's a variable rate loan. He's been siphoning from your joint retirement account to make the interest payments. He put you at risk. All of it." He looked at me, his accountant's eyes searching mine. "Why didn't you tell me?" "He said it was complex," I said simply. David's jaw tightened. He tapped a final page. "This is a power of attorney document, a durable power of attorney. It gives you, and me as your secondary, total control over all assets. He has to sign it." "He won't," I said. "He will." David squared the papers. "Or I report him. This isn't just bad investing, Mom. This is fraud." Right on cue, the door to Marcus's office opened. "Ellie, was that the David?" Marcus walked into the kitchen, his face open, smiling. "David, what a wonderful surprise. Why didn't you tell me you were coming down? We could have planned a barbecue." He went to clap David on the shoulder, but my son took a half step back. Marcus's smile wavered. He looked at the papers on the island. He looked at my face, then at David's. "What's this?" Marcus asked. "More of your mother's classes?" "This is an audit, Dad," David said. He pushed the printed spreadsheets across the quartz. "What is Sentinel 1402? The color drained from Marcus's face. The charm vanished. He looked old. "That," Marcus said, trying to muster his authority, "is my business. It's for your mother's own good. It's complex." "It's not complex," David snapped. "It's theft. You leveraged her home. You emptied her retirement fund to pay for your other life. It's done." David slid the single durable power of attorney document on top of the pile. "You're going to sign this right now. It gives Mom full control. Or my next call is to the SEC and to Sarah. Sarah, my daughter, his favorite, the one who still believed he was a brilliant patriarch." Marcus looked at me. I was just standing by the sink watching. He was searching for an ally. He found none. He looked back at his son, his self-perception as the brilliant patriarch, his first and most important win. It was gone. His hand was shaking. "The pen, Dad," David said, holding one out. Marcus looked at the document. He looked at his son. Then he took the pen. After David left, Marcus became a ghost in our house. He was 78 years old, a man who had commanded boardrooms, and he now had to ask me for money. I sat at the kitchen island, the same one where I had discovered his betrayal. I was paying the household bills on my iPad. The power of attorney was filed. All the accounts were in my name. Marcus came in, holding a credit card receipt. He was wearing his golf shirt, but he hadn't played in a week. "Eleanor," he said. His voice was soft. "The lawn service, you need to approve the charge." "I did," I said, not looking up. "It was auto-debited." "No," he said. He slid the pink receipt onto the quartz. "The extra charge. For the aeration," I looked at the slip. $25. I looked at him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Fine, Marcus. I'll approve it," I said. He nodded, relieved. "Thank you." He still had one thing left. One win that David hadn't taken, that I hadn't touched. His position on the board of the San Diego Children's Charity. He was the chairman of the annual gala. It was his entire reputation. "About the gala," he said, trying to sound like his old self. "It's next Saturday. I'm giving the keynote. I really need you to be there, Ellie." "Of course, Marcus," I said, tapping the screen. I wouldn't miss it. The next day, I told Marcus I had a follow-up with my counselor. He just nodded. I didn't drive to Ms. Davis's office in UTC. I drove to the Poway library. The library was quiet. It smelled like old paper and floor wax. I walked past the children's section, past the large print books, and went to the public computer terminals in the back. A teenager was playing a game on one. An elderly man was reading the news on another. I sat at an empty station. The keyboard was sticky. I used a wipe from my purse to clean it. Then I opened the browser. I created a new anonymous email account. A temporary one, just as my cybersecurity instructor had shown us. The name I chose was simple. SD Concerned Donor Ms. Davis had given me the recovered files on a small plain USB drive. The files Marcus had deleted, the ones showing wire transfers from the charity's discretionary fund to a private account. The same private account that paid the property taxes for the Sentinel Unit 1402. I attached the scanned bank statements. I attached the recovered spreadsheets. I looked up the name of the board's president, a man named Arthur Sterling, whom Marcus had often complained about. I found his email address on the charity's Contact Us page. I wrote the message. I made sure to sound confused and very, very concerned. Dear Mr. Sterling, I am a longtime supporter of the charity. I received these documents by mistake and I am so worried. I don't understand what they mean. It looks like money is moving from the discretionary fund to a private account. I'm sure it's a mistake, but I am very concerned about my donation. Please look into this. I read it twice. It was perfect. It was the voice of a concerned elderly woman. I hit send. I logged out. I wiped the browser history, cleared the cache, and shut down the computer. I pulled the USB drive from the port and dropped it back into my purse. Then I stood up, walked out of the library, and drove home. 4 days passed. Marcus practiced his gala speech in his office. I heard his voice rising and falling, trying to find its old charm. On Thursday afternoon, I was in the living room reading a novel. The phone rang. I heard Marcus pick it up in his office. Arthur. His voice boomed. Good to hear from you. Yes, the speech is coming along. What? No, I don't understand. His voice lost its air. It became small. That's an outrageous lie, Arthur. No, it's complex. It's a misunderstanding. Arthur? Arthur, wait. I heard a click. The call was over. There was a long, deep silence from his office. The only sound was the tick, tick, tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. He walked out. His face was the color of ash. He looked right at me, but I don't think he saw me. The gala, he whispered. What about it, dear? I asked, looking up from my book. They asked me to resign. Resign? I put the book down, feigning shock. But why? You're the chairman. Your speech. They said he couldn't finish. He shook his head. They're postponing the gala. They said I should step down. For my health. He collapsed into his armchair. He put his face in his hands. His reputation. His last win. It was gone. Oh, Marcus, I said. I got up and put my hand on his shoulder. His body was trembling. That's a terrible shame. You worked so hard. Marcus was a body in the house. He moved from his office to the living room and back. He read the newspaper, but I could see his eyes weren't tracking the words. He was a man with no calls to make, no meetings to attend, and no one to impress. His wins were gone, all except the last one, the secret one, the Sentinel, Unit 1402. I sat in my study. The power of attorney was on my desk, a thick stack of paper in a neat blue folder. David had handled everything. It was a Tuesday morning. The house was quiet except for the sound of a gardener's leaf blower outside. I picked up my phone and dialed David's number. He answered on the first ring. Mom, is everything okay? Yes, David, everything is fine, I said. It's time. I want to deal with the downtown property. There was a pause on his end. I heard him take a breath. Mom, I've looked at the documents again. With your power of attorney, we can just assume the loan. We can take control of the property and sell it. We don't have to force his hand. No, I said. My voice was calm. He used our assets as collateral. I want our assets back. Okay, David said. His voice was professional again. Okay, here is what will happen. The loan on the condo is backed by your shared liquid accounts. I am going to use your power of attorney to transfer every dollar from those shared accounts into a new trust, in your name only. The bank will see their collateral is gone. They will issue an immediate margin call. He will have to pay the entire loan balance all at once. He doesn't have the money, I said. No, David agreed. Not without liquidating his hidden portfolio. The one he used to pay the taxes and the woman's utility bills. He will have to sell all of it, most likely at a loss. And he will almost certainly have to sell the condo itself to cover the balance. When can this be done? I asked. Now, Mom, I can do it right now. Please do, I said, and I hung up the phone. I sat at my desk for an hour. I heard the grandfather clock chime 11. I heard Marcus pour himself a glass of water in the kitchen. At 11:15 a.m., my phone rang. I didn't answer it. It rang again. I ignored it. Then I heard his footsteps. Not the slow shuffle of the past week, but a fast, heavy-footed stomp. My study door flew open. Marcus stood there, his face red, his phone clutched in his hand. He was breathing hard. "What did you do?" he shouted. His voice cracked. "What did you do?" I looked up from my desk. "I don't know what you mean, Marcus." "The bank. The bank just called. They're calling the loan on the condo. They said the collateral is gone. They said my accounts are frozen. I have to pay the entire balance. By Friday." "Yes, Marcus," I said. "I know." He stared at me. The red in his face drained away, leaving a sick, pale gray. "But I can't," he whispered. "I can't. Not without the other portfolio. I'll have to sell. I'll have to sell everything. The stocks, the bonds. I'll be ruined." "Yes," I said. "You will." He leaned against the doorframe. He looked at the phone in his hand as if it were a strange object. I'll still be short. I'll have to sell the condo." He said it to himself, not to me. He was watching his last, most important win evaporate. His secret. His other life. His escape. He slid down the doorframe until he was sitting on the floor, his back against the wall. He looked old. He looked abandoned. He looked up at me, and for the first time, he wasn't looking at his wife. He was seeing the person who had taken everything. "You," he whispered. The word was full of a terrible, final understanding. This wasn't David. This was all you. I looked down at Marcus. He was a shrunken figure on the floor, lost in the doorway of my study. The man who had managed boardrooms, who had managed my life, who had managed his betrayal, was gone. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. He was finally truly vulnerable. He was emotionally abandoned. "Why, Eleanor?" he whispered. His voice was hoarse. "After 50 years, why?" I stood up from my desk. I picked up my purse. I looked at him, not with hatred, not with anger. I looked at him with a profound, cold absence of feeling. "You asked me to trust you with the complex things, Marcus," I said. My voice was soft, clear. This was complex. So I handled it. I walked around him. He didn't move. I walked down the hall, my heels clicking on the hardwood. I passed the grandfather clock. Tick, tick, tick. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the bright Poway sunlight. I did not look back. I got free. The reset was complete. My new apartment in La Jolla is small. It's on the 6th floor of a modern building, and the entire west wall is glass. I don't live in the silence of a large, empty house anymore. I live with the constant sound of the ocean, the waves breaking on the shore. The air smells like salt. I am 76 years old. I have been here for 3 months. The apartment is furnished with my things. A comfortable chair, a good reading lamp, a small, fast laptop. There are no golf trophies. There are no charity plaques. I'm sitting in my chair looking out at the water. The sun is setting and the sky is a pale orange. My laptop is open on my lap. I'm not looking at spreadsheets. I'm not in a cybersecurity class. I am on an airline website. I book a flight. A one-way ticket to Seattle to visit my son and his children. I use my own credit card. From my own account, the melancholy is still here. A life was wasted. 50 years were spent on a man who saw me as scenery. That pain does not just go away. But the peace I feel is not from healing. It's not the absence of pain. It's the presence of control. I look at the confirmation screen. My flight leaves tomorrow. I close the laptop. I watch the last bit of sun disappear into the Pacific, and I know, with absolute quiet certainty, that I have all of it.